the forest cult. My Uncle Jamie worked as a cop in a small town in New Zealand. It was a quiet place with the usual amount of small-town crime, domestic violence, break-and-enters, property damage. Nothing particularly remarkable ever happened within city limits. Outside the city limits, however, something strange is happening, and it eventually convinced him to leave the department entirely. The police station in Jamie's small town often gets reports from local hunters and farmers about hooded figures walking around the forest in groups. They're never doing anything obviously threatening, but everyone who sees them becomes uneasy and eventually ends up calling it in. In addition to seeing the figures themselves, locals who venture out into the forest will sometimes find ceremonial or ritual sites, and we're talking way out there, sometimes as much as 15 kilometers deep into thick brush. It was around 10 years ago Jamie responded to the call which would ultimately lead to his resignation. It was 2 a.m, in the middle of his shift, when dispatch sent him out to a rural property outside of town. When he got there, the farmer who had made the call told Jamie that he had seen groups of these hooded men walking up and down the tree line near his property. They had been carrying torches and seemed to be placing objects. The farmer couldn't say exactly what those objects were, but the whole experience was frightening his family and disturbing his animals. Jamie could see the torchlights glow at the edge of the forest and decided he should call for backup just in case. After radioing into dispatch, he walked across the field to find a group of 8 men wearing what appeared to be robes and carrying literal torches. Jamie identified himself as a peace officer, but while the men turned to observe him, they didn't acknowledge him in any other way. They simply stood there, torches in hand, watching him. Jamie was, and is, a big guy who can get physical when he needs to, but it's very much a last resort. And besides, he says when telling this story, 8-on-1 is a fight you only win in the movies. According to Jamie, they didn't so much as move a muscle. It was then a creeping fear set in, and he suddenly regretted not waiting till his backup had arrived. It was shortly after this fear manifested itself that the strangest thing happened. Jamie says one of the men began speaking to him in a way he describes as seductive. He cannot recall what the man said to him, just that he convinced my uncle to let them walk away without providing any identifying information. All Jamie remembers is the men fading out slightly, and then he came to with his backup trying to get his attention. Up to 10 minutes had lapsed, but he has no memory of what happened or where the men went. Jamie's not a believer in the supernatural or the paranormal or anything like that, or so he claims. But he does believe the men somehow hypnotized or drugged him that night. The experience got into his head, and after a few more months on the job, he resigned without warning and became a commercial fisherman. So far as we know, those calls still come into the station, but if anyone else has been similarly affected, they've kept it to themselves.
Yeah, New Zealand. Strange place.
Yeah, to be honest, I have not heard many stories from New Zealand.
You may be in luck then, in the future.
Oh, really?
I'm hopefully going to be doing an episode on some haunted locations in New Zealand, hopefully
Sweet.
this side of Christmas.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. I'm always interested in kind of cult stories. I don't know why. I think because there's that, the sort of the movie part of me that thinks like True Detective and all these shows where there's like a secret cult kind of getting up to shit.
Yeah.
Although in this case, I got to say, if they've been getting these calls for 10 years, whatever this cult is getting up to, they're not very good at it.
They're not very secretive.
That too, yeah. We're just, they're back. Oh, they're just chanting and hypnotizing dudes, and it's just a men's club. They've just gotten really good at talking bullshit, and the cops just their eyes glaze over. They're going to talk to you about IPAs or home brewing or something. Like, oh Jesus, no, hard pass. Glaze out.
Yes, things were a lot better in the Hellfire Club's day.
I'm telling you, the shit got done. Even if that shit was mostly orgies.
Yes, absolutely. But I always like stories like this because I know next to nothing about paranormal history of New Zealand. So it's very interesting when you come across things like that because that's just a bit odd. Oh yeah,
I mean, it reminded me a little bit of a story from I can't remember what episode it was. I want to say it was a Pennsylvania episode, or the story at least took place in Pennsylvania. But some people had kind of gone out to the woods in their car to do, whatever it is people go out in the woods to do in their Subarus with their mattresses in them. And they had seen like a guy in a robe just standing in the road, and then a couple other guys in robes turned up. And I mean, I don't necessarily believe, obviously I don't believe in Satan, but I believe that there are a lot of folks who don't share that disbelief of mine. and who are all, or whoever they're worshiping too. You know, it could be Toucan Sam for all I care. But if they're getting up to shit, you know, they believe it, and so they're maybe not all that safe to be around them.
Mm. Mm. Well, as with anything, as we know, when you look at people who believe that Brian from Venus is talking to them,
Yeah.
there's enough. If you tell a convincing enough story, there's enough people who'll come follow you. And sometimes they'll follow you into the woods with flaming torches for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Yet another reason to stay out of the woods, Paul.
Well, we don't follow that advice anymore, do we?
I'd like to think that was a one-off until the next time we're in the same place and we got a skin full of booze in us. But we'll wait till that happens.
Yes, as we venture into the haunted forest
again. Telling you, someone give us a series. We will do it. You hear me, Discovery Plus?
Yeah.
Throw
Don't
some
go
bucks
there.
there. Send me and Paul into haunted places. We will do dumb shit.
Yeah, that's what we should call it. Don't go there. Okay?
Don't go there with Brennan Storr and Paul Bestel. Or Paul Bestel and Brennan Storr. I'm open to either. I'm not hung up on it. Call us Discovery. You got everything else on there. I guess I shouldn't insult them if I want their money. Maybe they're into the whole FinDom thing. You know, if I'm mean to them, they'll pay me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Or just shoot the person you're supposed to love in the foot, and you get a series.
I don't know where this is coming from, but it just sure took a dark turn.
I'm just saying. They're promoting a new show talking about the Megan Thee Stallion and her partner who shot her in the foot.
Are they?
They've done a series about it because that's what the kind of content should be on Discovery Plus, apparently.
Well, Discovery Plus, I'll forgive you if you pass.
Can't be any worse than that bloody mermaid documentary they did.
I didn't see that one.
I mean, it was so shit. It was obvious it wasn't real. And yet they went, well, you know what? What do you want me to know? The guy that's in it has been in lots of other fake documentaries.
Yep.
So I don't think he's a scientist. I think he's an actor. And not a very good one at that.
I remember back when we started Weird together, the whole point was to try and drive engagement to the Ghost Story Guys YouTube channel. So we were actually going to be working, looking at like paranormal documentaries. And then I realized a lot of them are shite. So we stopped and we started doing horror movies. But we stopped after, because we for a while I had Discovery Plus and I was using it to try and find stuff. And there was one, I think it was called Helltown.
Oh, that's bollocks.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I realized it was bollocks pretty quick. But it really jumped out at me when the professor who was talking, the professor of like whatever university, kept mispronouncing regional names.
Yeah.
And I'm not from that area, and I know how those things are pronounced. And he's getting them wrong. And I looked it up, and yeah, he's an actor who plays professors in these things. And, oh, dude, just stop. Stop. Look in the mirror and think about what you've done.
Yes, and don't do it again.
Yeah, please. Until you hire us. Don't go there with Brennan Paul. Although that does also kind of sound like our, cancelable Twitter show that we host with Tucker Carlson, you know? Don't go there. What the woke mob don't want you to say.
It's come to something you can't insult anybody and make spurious allegations about them without people saying you're wrong.
What has the world come to?
Oh, it's disgraceful. You can't lie about anybody anymore. It's ridiculous.
Well, Discovery Plus on Don't Go There with Brendan Paul, we will lie for you.
Yes. I mean, people can't even know what contrails are. Keep calling them chemtrails. That's how polluted they've done to us. Dropping iron nitrate into his eyes from the sky.
Well, if they're dropping the iron, how come you need to take some? That doesn't make any sense. Checkmate.
Not in my eyes, though.
Oh, see, okay.
It's to counterbalance the fluoride in the water.
God. All right, Discovery Plus. I think we've done enough of an audition for you. We are right up your alley, clearly. Call us.